Hey everybody, my name is Megan Rohrer. For those of you whom I've already met, good to see you again. For those who are new to interacting with me, a brief bit of information about myself that is relevant to our course today is that I have about 20 years of chaplaincy experience in the San Francisco Bay Area, primarily working with homeless individuals, with LGBTQ individuals. I have worked in church spaces, primarily Lutheran, but also in Episcopalian and Presbyterian spaces. I have done chaplaincy work and been on the board with chaplaincy at San Francisco General Hospital, and also was a paid chaplain for the San Francisco Police Department for about a 3-year period. I helped do emergency, disaster, and grief calls throughout the city and county of San Francisco, mostly at the request of first responders and those in the 911 system, but through various different departments throughout San Francisco. And that led me to do a lot of types of grief work. And I would get called out to a location that was unknown with a community of people that I had never met before and help to train other chaplains to be prepared to do a similar thing, to sit with the grief that people are carrying, whatever type of emergency it came from, and to help them have a safe and healthy 72 hours until they could connect with other providers that might be in their regular wellness and support list. Over the years, I've done a lot of different types of trauma care and training and a lot of community activism, everything from protests to caring for communities behind the scenes. When we're talking about grief in the time that you'll be spending with me, yes, most people think about grief in relationship to a loss or a death, but grief is so many different things. And what I grieve might not be the same as what you are grieving. I might be grieving a change, how the ways the world changed that I am not on board with, and I like it in the good old days, whatever that means for me. I might be grieving that my body doesn't behave or act the way I wish that it would, either because I've had changes in my own personal abilities or disabilities, or because just the way I am viewed in the world, the access, the privilege that I have is not possible for me because of the current context that I'm living in, or the job that's not what I hoped it would be, or just the physical health that I long for. Grief surrounds chronic illness, it surrounds changes and stuckness that people might experience through addictions and the recovery process. Grief is something that we can carry for what we left undone or for what we did on purpose and enjoyed it. Grief can be something that happens because those we love or are in community with experience any of those things. We can have grief in the aftermath of a disaster, man made or natural, in the ways that our things change, our housing status change, the loss of a pet, or just something that we deeply care about. There are also intergenerational traumas that can come from really big things. The Holocaust for the Jewish community is a very big intergenerational trauma. The AIDS crisis for some people in the LGBTQ community, and for some who are parts of minority groups or groups that have been continuously discriminated against, there can be traumas we carry because they happen to people like us in times before we lived on this planet. There are also other types of grief that are about like the grief you have when you read the paper and maybe a community you're a part of does a thing that doesn't sit well with you ethically or emotionally. There are economic types of grief. The list is really endless. Think a little bit about the types of grief that you have carried, that you continue to carry, griefs that you have that are different when there's different leadership in the world, and maybe grief that you have that's different based on What chosen and bloodline families are near or far away from you? All of these griefs are valid. The other thing that's true is that grief visits some of us in profoundly different ways. For some, it matches some of the psychologically diagnosed depression symptoms. For others, it is spoken about poetically. Even the pain or lack of pain we feel in our body can be experienced radically differently based on where we live in the globe and what our understanding is about things like what happened when we die, or how our bodies are expected to function, or what we're able to perform on the outside of our bodies based on what people might have taught us about our gender or other things that we carry in our culture. Ponder some of the ways that you have carried grief in your life. We're going to learn some rituals that will help promote certain types of carrying grief, particularly in communal settings during our time together. So if you have a thing that you can think of that was a time you encountered grief, that's not the hardest thing you're going through, but something appropriate to go through in a community of other people and an online Zoom class where it's not possible to hug or do other things that might be culturally supportive to some. That would be really helpful before you show up for class. The other thing that I want to say out loud is there's some pretty strong statistical data that shows when we avoid language about the fact that someone died or is dead, it can create spiritually deep trauma in people, connected to the ways that sometimes grief is connected to not feeling like something truly happened or not. If you have ever had a conversation with someone who is so deeply in grief about a big political event and they can't even acknowledge that it existed with the same reality facts that you have. COVID would be a good example of this. Some uprisings or protests could be an example of this. If people have just simply different facts or gaps in their memory and you're like, why is the world like this? I just want to allow you some time to ponder, what if a lot of what we're going through is grief? Sometimes, as a faith leader, imagining others who are annoying us, doing bad things on purpose, or carrying grief makes it easier to be in relationship with them in kind ways back. Other days that doesn't work because we're fully humans, but what will it be like to ponder that? That's something we'll sit with and think about in our time together.